What if the most famous royal birth of the decade never actually happened? What if everything we thought we knew, the glowing photos, the carefully cradled bump, the fairy tale hospital story, was nothing more than an elaborate illusion? 4 years, the world watched Meghan Markle and Prince Harry rewrite royal tradition. They walked away from the crown, courted Hollywood, and promised a life of transparency and truth. But behind their smiles, a secret was hiding in plain sight. And now, that secret is clawing its way to the surface, with receipts. A woman has stepped forward, not with rumors, with documents, with hospital files, with a paper trail, and a promise that she was the one who carried their children, not Meghan. It sounds unbelievable, until you look closer. Then, suddenly, every photo, every headline, every perfect moment starts to crack. Because if this woman is telling the truth, then Meghan wasn't just wearing a baby bump. She was wearing a lie. And this could be the beginning of the end for the Sussex fairy tale. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't hiding. And she didn't come to play games. When the camera started rolling, the woman who identified herself only as DL looked straight into the lens. No voice distortion, no pixelated face, no hesitation. Dressed in plain clothing, her posture calm and unnervingly confident, she didn't speak like someone chasing clout. She spoke like someone who had waited long enough. Her words were simple, but devastating. I carried both of Meghan and Harry's children. I wasn't a donor. I wasn't a stand-in. I was the full surrogate. And just like that, the unthinkable exploded across headlines around the world. DL claimed that her role had been erased, her identity buried under layers of legal threats and PR spin. She said she had been promised privacy, compensation, and the ability to walk away. But instead, she said she was silenced. They treated me like a vessel, not a woman, not a mother, just a means to an end. That one line, a means to an end, ignited like wildfire across social media. Royal watchers, skeptics, and conspiracy theorists all collided in a digital storm. But this time, it wasn't just whispers in Reddit threads or grainy YouTube clips. This was real. This was televised. And DL, she wasn't backing down. For the first time, someone had stepped out of the shadows and dared to pull back the curtain on one of the most mysterious chapters in modern royal history. But she wasn't done, because what DL revealed next didn't just challenge the narrative. It threatened to dismantle it. It's one thing to make a wild accusation. It's another to bring receipts. And DL didn't show up empty-handed. Midway through her interview, she calmly reached down, pulled out a thick folder, and placed it on the table like it was nothing. Inside, a bomb waiting to detonate, medical records, embryo implantation logs, follow-up appointment, blood work, ultrasound scans, all dated between late 2018 and mid-2019, a timeline that aligns perfectly with Meghan's supposed pregnancies with both Archie and Lilibet. But that wasn't all. According to DL, these documents came directly from a discreet, high-end fertility clinic in Beverly Hills, one that catered to Hollywood's elite. She claims they were leaked by an insider furious about what they called a cover-up of global proportions. Names were redacted, but the procedures were clear. The dates were surgical, the timing unmistakable. Even more disturbing was the financial trail. Wire transfers, deposits, payments from shell companies traced back to firms allegedly linked to Harry and Meghan's inner circle. One transfer, DL claims, came from a company registered in the Cayman Islands, the same address used by a now-defunct LLC connected to a former Sussex business advisor. And then there was the NDA, a legally binding non-disclosure agreement that DL says she was forced to sign under pressure, with threats of financial ruin if she ever spoke out. She didn't reveal all the details. Not yet, but she made it clear that lawyers were now involved. And they weren't backing down. This wasn't a tabloid stunt. This was a woman with receipts. The kind that don't just get ignored. The kind that demand answers. But if documents could still be doubted, there was one thing DL offered that couldn't be forged: her DNA. And that's when things went from explosive to nuclear. If anyone still thought DL was bluffing, she made it clear she wasn't. Midway through the interview, without theatrics, without hesitation, she dropped the final card on the table, and it was the one no one saw coming. I'm ready to take a DNA test. Publicly. On camera. With neutral third-party supervision. Let's settle this. No backroom deals. No handpicked labs. No private negotiations. She offered to submit her genetic material alongside that of Archie and Lilibet and let the world watch the results unfold in real time. It wasn't a threat. It was a challenge. And that's what made it so dangerous. Because Meghan and Harry didn't respond. No press release. No legal threat. No denial. Just silence. For critics, that silence spoke louder than words. Because if the allegations were false, why not call her bluff? DL wasn't some desperate figure grasping at fame. She came prepared, composed, and armed with enough documentation to raise serious questions. But it was her willingness to undergo a live, filmed DNA test that sent shockwaves across both sides of the Atlantic. Social media exploded. Hashtags surged. Media outlets scrambled. Even royal commentators who usually brushed off internet rumors started to shift their tone. Because now, it wasn't just about a woman's word. It was about science. And science doesn't play favorites. But what truly made DL's offer devastating wasn't just the challenge itself. It was what she said next. They won't agree to a test. Because they already know. And with that, she didn't just accuse the royal couple of lying. She dared them to prove her wrong. But instead of answers, the world got radio silence. Until someone pulled an old clip out of the archives. A moment long dismissed, but now impossible to ignore. It was just a few seconds of footage. A casual moment. Meghan Markle in a crisp white dress, smiling as she crouched down. But what happened next turned a graceful gesture into the internet's most dissected mystery. Her baby bump visibly folded inward, collapsing like fabric instead of flesh. At the time, it was laughed off. Poor camera angle, bad lighting, maybe just the way the dress moved. The mainstream media rolled their eyes. Royal supporters dismissed it as just another conspiracy from the crazy corners of YouTube. But that was then. Now, with DL's claims echoing through every headline, that clip is being rewatched with a chill down the spine. Because if Meghan's bump wasn't real, that video might not be strange at all. It might be proof. DL herself referenced the moment directly. I saw the videos. I watched her cradle something that wasn't hers. I watched the world adore a fantasy I physically built, and I stayed silent. But not anymore. The folding bump, once a fringe theory, is suddenly at the center of the conversation. Side-by-side comparisons, frame-by-frame breakdowns. Even seasoned image analysts are quietly admitting it doesn't behave like a human body should. And that's what makes this moment so haunting. Because in a scandal full of words and paper, this was visual. It's something you can see, replay, freeze, zoom in on. And suddenly, millions are asking, was that the moment the truth slipped out on camera? And if it was, what else was staged? But behind every illusion is a motive. And behind Meghan's perfect pregnancy may have been something much bigger than optics. Because in the royal family, image isn't everything, it's protocol. And when that protocol is broken, the consequences don't stop at scandal. They strike at the very foundation of the crown. In the British monarchy, tradition isn't just ceremony, it's law. And when it comes to royal births, every detail, from the hospital doors to the birth certificate, is choreographed with precision. That's what made Meghan and Harry's approach feel so off. There was no hospital photo op, no polished post-birth moment on the Lindo wing steps, no smiling medical team, no proud royal parents posing for the press. Instead, the world got Harry standing awkwardly in front of a horse stable, announcing the birth of his son like it was a late voicemail. No details, no timeline, no medical confirmation. At the time, people chalked it up to the couple doing things differently. Maybe they wanted privacy, maybe they were breaking the mold. But now, it's starting to look less like privacy and more like a cover-up. Then came the birth certificate. When it was finally released, weeks later than expected, people noticed something strange. Meghan's full legal name, Rachel Meghan Markle, wasn't listed. Instead, it simply read, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Sussex. The palace tried to explain it away. A formatting choice, a clerical error, maybe a preference for uniformity. But legal experts quietly raised eyebrows. Because under British law, for a birth certificate to be valid, the actual mother must be listed with her real name. Not a title, not a placeholder. And if Meghan wasn't the woman who gave birth that day, then listing her as the mother might have crossed into fraudulent territory. Which brings us back to DL's claim. Because if she's telling the truth, if Meghan never physically gave birth, then that missing legal name wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated decision to erase the real woman behind the royal baby. And that opens the door to something even more serious. Because in royal circles, a deviation from protocol isn't just controversial. It can be constitutionally catastrophic. This isn't just about a lie. This isn't just about a fake bump or a missing signature. This is about the one thing the British monarchy cannot survive without: legitimacy. Because if what DL claims is true, if Meghan Markle never physically gave birth to Archie or Lilibet, then we are no longer talking about celebrity scandal. We are talking about a royal reckoning. Under centuries-old royal law, heirs to the throne must be born of the body of the royal marriage. That phrase may sound archaic, but it still stands. It ensures the bloodline remains unbroken, that titles and succession rights are passed down through direct biological lineage, not via secrecy, and certainly not via deception. If Archie and Lilibet were born via surrogacy, and that surrogacy was never formally declared, never legally recorded with the crown, their claims to royal status, to titles, to places in the line of succession could be nullified. Not symbolically, legally. Think about it. Archie is currently 6th in line to the British throne. That's ahead of Prince Andrew, ahead of Princess Beatrice. He holds a position that, while unlikely to lead to a crown, still grants power, privilege, and a place in history. But that position requires one thing above all, proof that he was born the rightful heir. If DL's claims are proven, through documents, payments, DNA, and it becomes clear that Meghan and Harry concealed a surrogacy to maintain a royal illusion, then this isn't just PR damage. This is constitutional damage. Royal historians are already whispering behind closed doors. Advisors are reportedly scrambling to review title assignments. Legal scholars are revisiting succession law for scenarios that, until now, were considered unthinkable. Because no one, not even the palace, has an answer for one devastating question. What happens if an heir to the throne was never supposed to be in line at all? And as that question echoes through the corridors of Buckingham Palace, one thing becomes terrifyingly clear. If the monarchy can't verify its own bloodline, what is it even built on? On the surface, Buckingham Palace remains silent. No statements, no clarifications, no denials. But behind those stoic stone walls, sources say panic is setting in. Insiders describe a flurry of urgent meetings, hastily scheduled Zoom calls, and private legal consultations with constitutional experts, the kind of advisors who are only brought in when the crown itself is at risk. Senior palace officials are said to be reviewing decades-old documents, searching for precedent, scrambling for a legal foothold in case the worst is true. Because there's no royal playbook for this. There's never been a situation where the legitimacy of 2 children in the line of succession is questioned not by tabloids, but by medical records, legal contracts, and a DNA offer. One source close to the royal household put it bluntly, they're preparing for a constitutional landmine, and they don't know if they can defuse it. Royal historians, often called upon to explain past scandals, are now being asked a new question. What happens if heirs were created under false pretenses, and the public finds out? No one has an answer. And worse, every hour of silence makes the palace look complicit. If Meghan and Harry orchestrated a deception, and the institution went along with it, knowingly or not, then this isn't just a personal betrayal. It's an institutional crisis. Behind closed doors, staff have reportedly been ordered to not speak to press, even off the record. Planned events involving the Sussexes have been postponed. Invitations rescinded. Emails, normally polite and formal, are now brief, cold, and silent. As one palace aide whispered to a journalist, this isn't about protecting Meghan and Harry anymore. This is about saving the monarchy. And while the royal family hides behind tradition, 2 things grow stronger by the hour: public suspicion and DL's credibility. Because while Buckingham Palace ducks behind silence, the Sussexes have gone even quieter. And that silence, it's beginning to feel less like strategy and more like collapse. Meghan Markle was once everywhere. Red carpets, talk shows, podcasts, Instagram quotes, carefully curated press releases, and photo ops timed to perfection. But now, nothing. No public appearances, no podcast episodes, no Instagram activity, no heartfelt Archewell statement denying the claims. Not even a generic, we are exploring legal options. Just silence, a total PR blackout. And for anyone familiar with Meghan's media playbook, that silence is deafening. Because this is a woman who knows how to control a narrative. She's built a career and a post-royal empire on it. When criticism flared, she always had a counterstory ready. A new project, a new cause, a new angle. But this time, there's no counter-narrative, there's no spin, there's no damage control. Instead, there's just an empty spotlight and the growing sense that the Sussexes have gone into lockdown mode. Behind the scenes, insiders claim Meghan has cancelled meetings, postponed launches, and quietly backed out of scheduled appearances. Brands she was once tied to are suddenly going dark. Business partnerships once flaunted are now mysteriously paused or quietly scrubbed from public calendars. Even her much-hyped lifestyle brand, as ever, has gone eerily still. No marketing push, no press junkets, no teaser posts, a launch date that once felt imminent now feels deliberately delayed. And then there's Harry. According to those close to him, he's become isolated, withdrawn, and increasingly paranoid. Friends say he's cut off old allies, stopped answering texts, and is obsessively monitoring for leaks. Even his team, once tight-knit and loyal, is said to be fractured, unsure how to contain what's coming. For a couple who once claimed they were stepping back from royal life to gain freedom, the silence now feels less like liberation and more like containment. Because if the claims are truly baseless, they'd say so. They'd sue. They'd speak. They'd fight back. But instead, they've disappeared. And for a public already teetering on skepticism, that disappearance doesn't feel like innocence. It feels like panic. Meghan Markle was once everywhere. Red carpets, talk shows, podcasts, Instagram quotes, carefully curated press releases, and photo ops timed to perfection. But now, nothing. No public appearances, no podcast episodes, no Instagram activity, no heartfelt Archwell statement denying the claims. Not even a generic, "We are exploring legal options." Just silence, a total PR blackout. And for anyone familiar with Meghan's media playbook, that silence is deafening. Because this is a woman who knows how to control a narrative. She's built a career and a post-royal empire on it. When criticism flared, she always had a counterstory ready. A new project, a new cause, a new angle. But this time, there's no counter-narrative, there's no spin, there's no damage control. Instead, there's just an empty spotlight and the growing sense that the Sussexes have gone into lockdown mode. Behind the scenes, insiders claim Meghan has canceled meetings, postponed launches, and quietly backed out of scheduled appearances. Brands she was once tied to are suddenly going dark. Business partnerships once flaunted are now mysteriously paused or quietly scrubbed from public calendars. Even her much-hyped lifestyle brand, as ever, has gone eerily still. No marketing push, no press junkets, no teaser posts. A launch date that once felt imminent now feels deliberately delayed. And then there's Harry. According to those close to him, he's become isolated, withdrawn, and increasingly paranoid. Friends say he's cut off old allies, stopped answering texts, and is obsessively monitoring for leaks. Even his team, once tight-knit and loyal, is said to be fractured, unsure how to contain what's coming. For a couple who once claimed they were stepping back from royal life to gain freedom, the silence now feels less like liberation and more like containment. Because if the claims are truly baseless, they'd say so. They'd sue. They'd speak. They'd fight back. But instead, they've disappeared. And for a public already teetering on skepticism, that disappearance doesn't feel like innocence. It feels like panic. While Meghan disappears from the public eye, those close to Prince Harry say he's coming undone. Behind the closed doors of their Montecito estate, insiders describe a man who's cracking under the pressure, emotionally volatile, restless, snapping at staff, and haunted by the fear that the truth is slipping beyond his control. According to one former aide, Harry has become obsessively paranoid. He's reportedly cut ties with former friends, refused communication with certain family members, and now surrounds himself with only a tight circle of legal and PR advisors. Even that group, sources say, is growing uneasy, because the deeper the DL story goes, the clearer one thing becomes. Harry wasn't just a bystander. He may have been a co-architect. In her interview, DL didn't hesitate when asked about Harry's involvement. He knew everything. He was at the consultations. He signed the medical document. He looked me in the eye. That claim alone shifts the narrative completely. Because if true, Harry wasn't some confused husband playing along with a media strategy. He was present, informed, involved, and that changes everything. It means the deception, if it happened, wasn't just Meghan's idea. It was a joint operation, carried out at the highest levels of secrecy and spin. Some insiders now believe Harry may be experiencing what one source called a delayed collapse, the moment when the walls of denial, strategy, and PR finally fall, and the real consequences rush in. He fled the royal family to escape scrutiny, to live freely, to protect his wife and children from the press. But now, he's at the center of a global scandal, facing whispers that he didn't just lie to the world, he may have helped manufacture the lie. And while the public has always been quick to criticize Meghan, it's Harry who could end up bearing the deepest scars. Because if DL is telling the truth, and if the documents, the timeline, the medical records, and the NDA hold up, then Harry didn't just walk away from the palace. He walked into a conspiracy of his own making. Not long ago, Meghan Markle was royalty's reinvention story. The American actress turned Duchess, hailed as a modern Cinderella, a symbol of inclusion. strength, and independence. She wasn't just embraced, she was celebrated. A-list friends rallied behind her. Oprah, Ellen, Serena Williams, Tyler Perry, George, and Amal Clooney. They didn't just support her, they platformed her. Appearances, interviews, social media shout-outs, documentary cameos. Meghan was more than popular. She was protected. But now, those same voices have gone quiet. Not a single post, not a single defense, not even a vague thinking of you message. Even Serena Williams, once Meghan's loudest public supporter, hasn't so much as liked a comment. Ellen DeGeneres, who once called Meghan her friend and confidant, silent. Oprah, who orchestrated the interview that made Meghan's truth global. Not a word, because this isn't just scandal, this is radioactive. And in Hollywood, silence is rarely accidental. It's a signal, a distancing, a warning shot. Insiders say Meghan's once ironclad relationships are fracturing fast. Influencer deals are being reconsidered. Brand partnerships have stalled. And behind the scenes, PR insiders are whispering that damage control is no longer possible. This is containment. Her new lifestyle brand, as ever, has reportedly frozen its planned launch calendar. Digital managers have gone dark. Publicist emails are being left unread. Even her Netflix deals, once hyped as the crown jewel of her post-royal empire, are being quietly reevaluated. For a woman who once ruled the narrative with precision, it's a stunning reversal. Because now, she's not telling the story, she's watching it unravel. And while the public was once divided, support is rapidly shrinking. Polls show her approval ratings in free fall. Focus groups describe her as untrustworthy, performative, and overly calculated. The fairy tale image has shattered, replaced by something colder, sharper, and far more dangerous. She was once royalty's boldest rebel. Now she's becoming its most isolated exile. But the scariest part? This might not even be the bottom yet. Because what comes next doesn't just threaten Meghan's brand. It threatens the very foundation of the monarchy. Every institution survives on one thing, trust. And for the British monarchy, an ancient system built on tradition, lineage, and public reverence, trust isn't just valuable, it's everything. Which is why what's happening now isn't just a PR nightmare. It's an existential threat. According to Sir Edward Lane, the late Queen Elizabeth II's longtime press secretary and a man who once guided the royal family through Diana's death, 9/11, and Prince Andrew scandals, this moment isn't just scandalous. It's unprecedented, he said. This is not a moral issue. This is an institutional crisis. Because while the public might tolerate messy divorces, leaked memoirs, or even feuds between royal siblings, they won't tolerate deception. Especially not deception at the heart of the monarchy's most sacred promise, the bloodline. People must believe that the royal children are who they say they are, that their births were real, that the titles they carry were earned through legitimate means, that when a child is placed in the line of succession, they have the legal and biological right to be there. If that trust breaks, even once, the monarchy doesn't just lose credibility, it loses its reason to exist. And Sir Edward didn't mince words. The issue isn't the use of a surrogate, it's the secrecy, he said, the apparent manipulation, the effort to rewrite reality rather than just live in it. Meghan and Harry built their brand on authenticity, vulnerability, and transparency. They told Oprah the crown failed them. They said they were silenced, misunderstood, isolated. They begged for compassion, claiming all they ever wanted was to tell their truth. But if DL's claims are true, if a surrogate was used and erased, then that truth may have been carefully scripted fiction all along. And the silence from the Sussexes now, it's not reading as restraint, it's reading as fear. Because this isn't just about bad optics anymore. This is about a system that was never supposed to be questioned, being ripped wide open by a woman who was never supposed to speak. And once public trust is broken, there is no spin strong enough to rebuild it. If you think the scandal has peaked, think again. Because DL, she's just getting started. According to sources close to her legal team, full-length interviews have already been filmed, high definition, multiple angles, locked and loaded for primetime release. International news outlets are circling. Tabloids are sharpening their knives. Lawyers are prepping for emergency injunctions, but insiders say it may already be too late. The footage is coming. The documents are real. And the world is paying attention. DL has promised to release additional hospital records, embryo transfer logs, signed waivers, and, if necessary, a public, on-camera DNA test overseen by neutral experts. This isn't just a media stunt. It's a calculated, surgical dismantling of the Sussex fairy tale. And the silence from Harry and Meghan? It's no longer a mystery. It's a strategy of delay, one their critics are calling the final act of a failed deception. Behind the scenes, palace officials are in crisis mode. Legal scholars have reportedly dusted off archival succession laws, while constitutional experts are being consulted in private meetings that don't get scheduled unless something historic is underway. Because this goes beyond a family feud, beyond celebrity gossip. This is about the line of succession, the crown, the very system that governs the future of a kingdom. If Archie and Lilibet were born via surrogacy, and that surrogacy was never formally disclosed, their places in the royal line, 6th and 7th in line to the throne, could be ruled invalid. Legally, permanently, publicly, and that would not only shake the monarchy, it would rewrite it. So where does this leave Meghan and Harry, hiding behind the high walls of their Montecito mansion? Once adored as modern-day royals, now ghosts in their own narrative. No press conferences, no lawsuits, just the ticking clock of exposure, and a woman they tried to erase, now holding the pen. And DL, she doesn't want fame. She doesn't want money. She wants the truth to be known, and she's prepared to bring the entire royal house down to tell it. Because in the end, this scandal may not end with a crown. It may end with a courtroom. And trust this, the storm isn't coming. It's already here.